Hello, dear listener. Welcome back to the Informed Decisions podcast. We're revisiting a podcast from last week. Fran, somewhat infamous Fran, who accumulated 2 million pension pot by the age of 55 and blissfully retired with more income than he actually needed. We're back and we're looking at, do you really need a 2 million pension pot? As a couple combined, 2 million pension pot, is that too much? Or do I need it? And I'm going to share with you why I believe to achieve a comfortable retirement as defined by the Pension Council of Ireland, a comfortable lifestyle, why a €500,000 pension pot or equivalent of in defined benefit would be sufficient on top of state pension if you're going to retire in mid-60s, and why a €1 million pension pot or equivalent on top of state pension for a couple, based on the numbers we're going to see, would be sufficient. All right. If you're going to go in mid-50s, if you're going to exit employment in mid-50s. And these might seem like luxury kind of questions, but I believe they're the most important aspects in our retirement planning. They're hugely important. Please God, we get to enjoy a 2-3 decade retirement. That's quite a long period of time. If you think of all the life you lived between being born and reaching 30, you're going to hopefully have that kind of a time frame whereby you are no longer working for money and working to accumulate. So it's kind of an important thing to consider. It's possibly a long way away for some, possibly around the corner, or very imminent for others. But I believe it is important. And as we saw, Fran, he was in our scenario by 55, he'd accumulated €2 million in pension wealth by maxing out his pension contribution for years and taking advantage of every tax break available from a pension funding perspective, employer contributions perspective, and investing it wisely. That's all he did. And I say all with a pinch of salt there, because there's quite a bit in that, of course, right? But even at 2 million pension pot at 55, someone like Fran might have been a bit nervous and saying, okay, well, is 2 million actually enough? Right? And you might say, gee, what a stupid question. But again, it depends on your level of expenditure and your future plans. What if I live to 95? What if I live to 105? And I'm drawing on this income for 40 years and drawing on these pension pots for 40 years. What happens then? What if inflation goes crazy, as it will do during a 3-4 decade retirement at times? What if there's another global financial crisis and the value of my pots halve essentially for a period of years? Should I keep working and keep accumulating just to be on the safe side? And these are very natural, very frequent questions that a lot of people and a lot of successful savers and accumulators ask. And I do believe it's kind of, I call it enough syndrome, as in, do I have enough? And the reality is that is an impossible question to give 100% answer to. Okay, it's impossible to know if you do have enough. There are so many variables and future changes and shifts. But it's that inability to recognize when you're within a very high margin of error position to be financially secure and you are financially independent. Knowing when that is and being able to move forward with that clarity, I believe, is a absolutely key aspect of all of this. And it's particularly difficult in times of heightened uncertainty and volatility, because that level of, how's the future going to pan out, becomes even murkier. If we're on a constant upward curve and a period where it's been unabated growth and good news, then it's a lot easier, even though if it may not necessarily be any safer. And then you listen to the likes of Bill Bengen, who we interviewed recently. If you haven't heard the podcast, please do check it out. Where he's saying, right, his old 4% rule is actually 5%. We should all, not all, but a lot of folks should be and could be drawing more than they possibly already are from their pension assets. So let's have a look at Fran's scenario again, right? And what I'll do is I'll actually jump into a piece of research shared by the Pension Planning or Pension Council of Ireland, okay, the Irish Pension Council. They found that, and this was launched in end of last year, okay, so it's inflation adjusted, etc. And it's a very, very decent, detailed research piece that they shared. And what they found is that a couple needs €43,200 every year to live what they define as a comfortable retirement, where there is an element of holidays, there's an element of discretionary luxury spending going on an annual basis. So that allows for holidays, dining out, cultural activities, as they call it, and some spontaneity with money. Okay. So in a scenario, let's take a scenario where Fran has a €2 million pension pot. Let's just do a reality check on that, shall we? If we apply the 4% rule, right, as detailed by Bill Bengen and discussed in the recent podcast and as covered by me for the last 8 years, I think, and at this stage, if you take that pot and he generates 4% a year from it, forgetting about tax-free lump sums or etc. 2 million by 4%, 80,000 annually gross from private pension, ARF income essentially, gross. If we then include 28,000 state pensions for Fran and partner are up at about 108,000 total gross pre-tax annual income. This puts them in comparable to the comfortable Irish Pension Council benchmark in an extremely comfortable position with more than double the comfortable benchmark. And here's the thing, benchmarks are highly individual, as is personal finance. Everyone's preferences, needs, and goals will differ. But that's where Fran wanted to get to, right? And that's where his determination to maximize his pension contributions every year, and as his threshold and band increased each year with his age, not each year, but when his personal contribution limits increased at different birthdays, his determination to increase his contributions into the pension and his employer contributions going in, that's where it got him. Do we need a €2 million pension pot? Do we need it? And is separate to do we want it, right? There's needs and wants here. But let's look at this another way. Okay, so Fran has 2 million. And as we said, last week, Fran retired at 55. So the year's pre-state pension to fund just the comfortable benchmark, and air quotes there, Fran needs €43,200 per year from the pension pot. Okay, that's what he needs to cover that Pension Council of Ireland comfortable lifestyle. All right. At a €2 million pension pot, that's in and around 2% withdrawal rate from 55 to 66 before state pension kicks in simple terms, right? Even starting drawdown at that early age is conservative and highly sustainable, drawing to 2.5% gross from an ARF. And then when he gets to 66 plus, him and his partner to subsidise state pensions, which we assumed at €28,000, to subsidise and to bridge the shortfall between that €28,000 and the 43,200 needed, Fran would need only 15,200 net per year from the pension pot. And in our scenario from last week, at that age, we'd assumed a pension pot value of 1.9 million. Okay. So that's a less than a 1% withdrawal rate from the ARF once state pension kicks in to ensure comfortable retirement and comfortable lifestyle with travel, with some spontaneity around spending. However, Fran will be obliged to draw 4% from the ARF once he triggers it, and he's over 60, 4% from the ARF to 70, and 5% from the year in which he turns 71. And if and when his ARF is over 2 million, he's obliged to withdraw 4% or 6% in those years. I beg your pardon. All right. So the surprising truth here is in this little nuance to last week where we say, okay, he only needs 43,200 per year. That's all he wants, right? In this scenario, Fran has too much. He has accumulated too much in his pension. Like his total retirement years from 55 to 90, that's 35 years, right? And I calculated approximately the total needed from private pensions from ARF over the course of those 35 years is a little over 1 million. That's it. And so that is made up of approximately 640,000 pre-state pension from 55 to 66, and then post-state pension, which is 24 years, approximately 500,000, approximately 450,000, allowing for some income tax and inflation adjustment in there. But as I said, Fran's pension pot is 2 million. Ballpark, we're saying all he needs is 1 million. So his excess wealth is 1 million euro here. So this excess could fund luxury holidays every year, significantly higher lifestyle than comfortable, substantial gifts to family and loved ones during their lives and during their retirement years, charitable giving, emergency healthcare costs, long-term care if needed down the road. And assuming that they don't use it for these purposes, the reality is that they will accumulate non-pension assets because they're obliged to take 4 or 5 and possibly even 6% per year from this pension pot. They're going to have more income than they'll probably need, again on the basis that all Fran is actually spending here now is the 40-odd thousand. So there's going to be substantial cash deposits and other assets that because they've more income than expenditure. Right? They've approximately 50,000 a year more gross income than expenditure, 60,000 a year. So whether that can be incorporated into business or family partnership in some way, which may be used for estate planning purposes, but anything that is still in the ARF upon death of Fran and his partner, of course, will be left in the ARF and will pass on to their estate and go to their beneficiaries. So it's certainly not lost in that scenario. But the point is that he has more, they have more pension assets than they need. So what does this mean? Well, I think this is why the whole point of this piece, do I need 2 million? Is that something I should be shooting for? The reality is you may need less than you think, depending on what income you want in retirement. If you really need the income that is suggested for a comfortable retirement, if that's all you need, let's say 1.1 million of a pension pot for a comfortable 35-year retirement from 55 to 90, combined comfortable retirement needs from 55 to 90 of 43,200, less the assumed combined state pensions from 66 to 90 of 30,000, that's where you're getting in and around a €1 million for a 35-year lifestyle. Comfortable lifestyle. The reality is that the state pension is incredibly important in the context of providing that comfortable lifestyle. It's going to cover, depending on the benefit that you've accumulated and you will qualify for, it's going to cover in the region of 50 to 70%, possibly, of that comfortable lifestyle. State pension, hugely important. In that scenario, your private pension just needs to fill the gap. That's all it needs to do. It's just bridging an extra 10, 15, maybe 20,000 a year. That's all you're looking for your private pension to do in that kind of scenario. And obviously, if you don't qualify for the state pension, or in the civil service, or it's an incorporated, then obviously the figures are going to be very different, and maybe even lesser that you might need from ABC pots or personal pensions. So in reality, if you're going to retire around mid-60s and you want that kind of pension council comfortable retirement, somewhere in the region of 300 to 500,000 if you're going to retire at mid-60s for a comfortable retirement. Or maybe 800 to 1.2 million for a luxury retirement. However, if you plan to retire or would like the option to retire around mid-50s, the numbers suggest a pension pot of around a 1 million for income generation may be required. So here's the point. If I were in this scenario where I'm looking and trying to figure all of this out, right? So I've got lots of different figures coming at me. Okay, Paddy, I think I get your point, and you're kind of half explaining it reasonably well. What do I do? Well, this is where I would start, okay? Couple of questions that I would write down on a page and spend a little bit of time thinking about and exploring with my partner or whoever else is in this situation with me. Number one, what kind of retirement do I actually want? As in, when will that be? Ideally, when would I like to have the choice to exit and to not be financially dependent on having to go to work, right? Whether that's for myself or for anyone else. Do I want a comfortable retirement? Does that kind of 43 grand figure sound like enough based on what we're currently spending and based on what we think life will be like and who will be supporting or not in the future? What kind of retirement do I actually want? Do we see ourselves traveling left, right, and center, flat out spending on hobbies and all these other good things? Go build a plane or whatever, travel the world every year, go on scuba diving trips every year. What is your desired lifestyle within the realms of reality, right? What do you want that to look like? We're going to be supporting ourselves, our loved ones. What degree of comfort do we want? Okay. Some people might describe themselves as, look, we're very simple folk. We don't need for a lot. And that's great. Others would be like, no, come here. We have big plans and they're not going to be cheap. That's great too. But just know what it is you are after. Begin with the end in mind, as the great Mr. Covey says, or used to say, rather. And based on that, what will my expenses actually be? Will the mortgage be cleared by that stage? What are supporting loved ones' expenses going to be like at this point in time and beyond? What are our own expenses going to be, both basic and then luxury and discretionary? If I factor inflation in, that should be done as part of the calculation, of course. What about healthcare costs, making sure we're not a burden on other people? What's needed? And again, Stick to the core, stick to the vision of what this actually looks like. And then question 3, how can I optimize what I'm already saving or doing or investing in this regard? Are you maximizing tax reliefs? Okay. Are you contributing as much as you can and should be contributing? Are you optimizing employer contributions? Are you and have you optimized PRSI contributions? If you are if you have pension income that you could possibly drawing down some on to make PRSI contributions, what other incomes have I got going on that I can be optimizing and maximizing without sacrificing living for today, of course? Should I consider AVCs as part of my employment contract? What, depending on your scenario, how am I investing? Are the investment choices I'm making now with my main retirement assets consistent with my plan and my capacity for volatility, etc.? As we saw with Fran, having crunched these numbers with an advisor, Fran chose to retire at 55 instead of continuing to work until 60 or beyond. He got over the enough syndrome. The numbers showed that continuing to save was unnecessary, absolutely unnecessary for Fran and his partner's goals. So instead, Fran, went volunteering with local charities and communities and groups, travels more, gifts more, and enjoys a stress-free retirement, knowing that their retirement assets and income, more importantly, would be sustainable and would be absolutely more than enough. That was Fran. But the takeaways for your own planning: if you feel you're behind on your savings, this is what I suggest you do. Consider maximizing your state pension entitlements and PRSI contributions, building enough of a private personal pension to cover the gap between what you know will be there to fund the lifestyle you need and what is likely to be there based on current funding. And then to understand your actual spending needs and plans in retirement and be prepared to either bring them back a notch if you're still going to be way behind, or extend out the accumulation phase to a point that will see you in very good shape. If you're a really good saver and you're ahead of schedule, way ahead of schedule, consider whether you're maybe saving too much, right? Or planning to save for too long. Could you maybe reduce pension contributions and enjoy more of your money now or do other things with them? Could you maybe take a career break or pursue career choices you've been putting off? Could you reduce your hours, move to a role? And I've seen all of these things being done, to be fair. Move to a role that is more sustainable, more enjoyable, less stressful, whatever the case may be. Not because you don't need to continue earning the big bucks, using air quotes again, relative to what you have been earning. Maybe could you support family members with their financial goals now if you're way, way ahead of schedule? Or could you retire earlier than planned and pursue fun projects sooner than later? Again, I've seen all of these things being done, and this, to me, is where the magic happens. Right? I love coming across cases where people are like, Paddy, look, need you to help me figure out where we are versus where we need to get to. I've done my own Excels and I've done my own analysis and I think we're okay. I love when, the conclusion that I draw is you're there. You are absolutely comfortably there with a very high margin for error. And then the choice and the freedom, and you can see the weight lift off people's shoulders, basically, and they can move on to the next chapter. That to me is gold. So if you're in that fortunate position, do some looking, do some thinking, do some prioritizing ultimately. And if you're somewhere in between, way behind and way ahead, calculate your state pension entitlement, define your retirement lifestyle goals, work out the annual income shortfall, and figure out what's that pot that I need to bridge. That's your target. Keep working towards it. maybe make some marginal gains and nuanced touches to your strategy, your investment choices, and your contributions, just to make sure they're as dialed in as you possibly can make them. So what's the bottom line here? Well, Fran's €2 million pension pot could fund the benchmark comfortable retirement 2 or 3 times over. He could live to 150 and he'd probably still be okay, more than okay. And this level of wealth provides tremendous peace of mind and flexibility and security. But it also maybe highlights that many of us are possibly aiming for targets that might be unnecessarily high. And we're delaying the point at which we actually do take action to move to the next chapter. And that to me is the biggest regret that people might have. It's like, feck it, you know what? I should have done this years ago. A few years ago, maybe, right? The goal, I don't believe, isn't to amass the largest possible pot. Like that's chasing vanity. I believe the real goal is to have enough, comfortably enough, to live the retirement we actually want for ourselves, not that we see others or hear others having. For most Irish couples, a combined pension pot of 500 to 800,000 alongside full state pension entitlements will provide a comfortable retirement from mid-60s. Comfortable. For most people's definition of comfortable, as per Pension Council of Ireland research. The key is to understand what comfortable means to you and plan accordingly. Every person's situation is unique. Your health, your family circumstances, existing assets, career trajectory and enjoyment and fulfillment and personal goals and dreams all influence what enough means for your retirement planning. I think the most important thing is to start today, to write out those questions. What do we want it to look like? What will it cost us? When do we want to do that? And then optimize your strategy accordingly. All right. Don't let uncertainty about the future prevent you from taking action today or from recognizing if you're already doing enough. Run your numbers and or hire a decent financial planner to help you develop a clear strategy to get you where you want to get to. That's what we love doing, but we can't help everyone. So please do seek guidance and a plan from someone who is qualified and who is fee only or fee based to help you develop a plan that is implementable, specific, and that excites you. That is what I think will help you get to where you want to get to. That's enough out of me. Thank you very much indeed for listening. Oh, we had a cracking weekend up around the region of Rostrevor. We went camping with a few family friends, kids running all over the place. Rostrevor, Kilbrony Park, beautiful part of the world. Highly recommend it if you're looking for something slightly different, slightly off the beaten track. And they're building a new bridge at Narrowwater there, just outside Newry, between Warren Point, Newry. Fabulous part of the world. Really, really nice. People were lovely. Weather was half decent. So there you go. That's a recommendation from me to you, dear listener. Thanks again for listening. As always, you're a legend.